On today's episode of What's Going On with Shipping, we look at the top 10 ship-owning nations as of 2024. I'm your host, Sal Mercogliano. Welcome to today's episode. So I was reading through container news because that's what I do. I really desperately need to get a life. But in container news, there was a story from VesselValue, which ironically measures the value of vessels around the world, and they do it by nation. And there's been a lot of movement in the top 10 ship-owning nations around the planet. So I thought I'd take this moment and break down our top 10 list. Take a look at what countries have moved up, who's come down, and where it stands. If you're new to the channel, hey, take a moment, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell so you'll be alerted about new videos as they come out. All right, the top 10 list. I'm pretty excited about this. We don't do top 10 lists too often, but we're going to go ahead and do it for this one. It should be great. We're starting at 1 or 10? 9. Starting at 9. Is this some sort of new math out by the Department of Education I'm unaware of? No. Okay. We're going to start at 9. Don't know why, but that's what we're going to start at. So number 9 is Germany at $49.5 billion. Now, Germany has dropped from 7th position down to 9th. Now, while Germany is a very strong owner of container ships, as a matter of fact, it has the 2nd position in terms of container ships, that value has dropped massively over the past year from 32.1 billion down to 17.8 billion. That's a 45% reduction. Now, while Germany has gone up in LNG fleet, mainly due to the situation regarding the import of natural gas from Russia, they are up from 625 million to over $1 billion. All right, let's go ahead and look at our next one. I'm going to assume it's number 8. It is. It's number 8, and it's Great Britain, the United Kingdom, at $53.8 billion. Now, the United Kingdom had been in 9th position. They have moved up to 8th position. And Great Britain is very strong in a few key sectors. The cruise industry represents 25% of ship value in Great Britain. Containers are about 15%. But the area that we've seen probably the greatest growth in is in the tanker sector. It's up to about 36.5%. That's a move from 5.2 billion in 2022 up to 7.2 billion. We're also seeing a growth in the LPG, liquefied petroleum gas sector, up 2.9 billion up to 5 billion. That's an increase and net about 30% of the fleet. All right, that takes us to our next position. Going to assume it's number 7, and it is Norway at 59.3. Now, Norway has moved up to 7th place. They surpassed Germany. They are big in Norwegian gas. I assume it's from all the herring they eat there. But the value of the Norwegian liquefied natural gas fleet has increased up to 16.7%. It's up over $2 billion from where it was. Plus, the value of their LPG fleet represents about 55%, up from 2.9 billion up to 4.5 billion. And one of the things we're seeing is Norway is investing heavily in new LPG gas vessel production. We're seeing them being built over in Korea, a lot of new vessels coming online. Norway is also the 2nd largest owner of vehicle carriers. This value is up from 9.2 from 8.2 billion. They represent about 13% of the fleet. Okay, that'll take us to our next place, which is South Korea at $67.0 billion. Now, South Korea retains its 6th position in the rankings. This is an increase of about $1 billion. However, the country has moved out of the top 10 in numbers of vessels owned. This is a very different measurement. This is value, not the number of vessels. But you're seeing new countries come into the number of vessels, the UAE, Russia, and the Netherlands, for example. Where South Korea is heavily invested in is in the LNG sector. We've seen massive investments. They're building a lot of LNGs, and they're owning a lot of these LNGs. The other sector that South Korea is big in is in global car exporting. They have placed some huge orders recently for new car carriers, and they are well on their way to continue to dominate that. The really big challenger to South Korea in terms of car carriers is going to be China. As we continue on our list, we hit number 5, which is still Singapore. Singapore at $85.7 billion. They're also in 4th place for the number of vessels owned. The Singapore container fleet stands at 3rd in the world at $22.1 billion. That accounts for about a quarter of the entire value of their entire fleet. Now, where we're seeing improvements in Singapore is in the LPG sector. The current valuation of the Singapore LPG sector stands at $9.3 billion. That's a substantial increase of 57% from the last report. This surge elevates Singapore into the 2nd position in terms of LPG sector. All right, let's go ahead and jump to number 4, which is the United States of America, coming in at $99.9 billion dollars. Man, just a fraction short there of $100 billion. Now, the U.S. is up over $1 billion from the last report. Now, you may be sitting there going, hang on a second, Sal, I thought the U.S. Merchant Marine was really small. It is. If you look at U.S. flagged registry, it's extremely small. Remember, registry is not ownership, or else we would see Panama, Liberia, the Marshall Islands on here. You're not going to see them on there. Registry is where you fly your flag. It's where you register the ship. It's where you do your inspections and certifications. It's how you do your crewing. Ownership is much different. And the reason the United States ownership is so big is that $49 billion of that, almost half of that, is centered in cruise ships, specifically 2 companies, Carnival and Royal Caribbean. Now, another subset here. Carnival, which is located in beautiful Doral, Florida, is incorporated not in the United States, but in Panama. And then Royal Caribbean, which is located in Miami, just a quick 30-minute drive from the headquarters of Carnival, is incorporated in, wait for it, Liberia. That's right. So 2 of the biggest corporations in this area are incorporated outside the United States, which means that while they're sitting there in beautiful southern Florida, they are not paying southern Florida taxes on their ships, on their crews, most of the crews, by the way, who are not United States. Now, that is not too surprising. I mean, you've seen a decrease in their fleet value over the past year. It's down about $4.7 billion from the last report, but that has a lot to do with the fact that they are phasing out older ships, getting rid of them. They had to clear their books. If you've seen the financials of the major cruise lines, Carnival, Royal Caribbean, and then the other one, Norwegian, you'll understand why that's happening. The U.S. is also a prominent owner in the car carrier sector in terms of its fleet, about $2.5 billion dollars worth of vessels, about 40 ships. That ranks it just behind Japan. All right, that's going to take us over to number 3, which is Greece. Not a big surprise here. Greece has been one of those biggest ship-owning countries for a long time. But notice that jump in value there, up to $169.4 billion. And one of the things you see there has to do with the Greek tanker fleet. The Greek tanker fleet has its highest value ever at $69.5 billion. And over the last 2 years, with Russian sanctions and the resulting surge in what's called ton-mile demand, this is the distance you have to move a ton of cargo over a set of miles. This continues to bolster the tanker earnings. This has kept the tanker values hovering around the highest level it's been since 2010. And so we're seeing these huge costs right now for vessels. For example, Suezmax vessels, which are about 160,000 deadweight tons, are up about 20.6% in terms of value. Greece is also the second largest owner of LNG ships. It's $31.1 billion, or about 143 vessels. So Greece definitely stands out as one of the biggest ship owners out there. All right, we continue our countdown by going to number 2. What? Number 1. You want me to jump number 2 to go to number 1? I don't understand your math. Sorry, I have a new producer, and he's got this idea of how to do math. I don't quite understand it. All right, we're going to go to the number 1 position, the strangest top 10 countdown ever. Number 1 is Japan at $206.4 billion. Japan continues to hold the number 1 position. This is an increase of about 5%. And what we're seeing is significant investments have been taking place in the Japanese tanker sector. This has increased the total value of that sector up 15% for many of the same reasons we talked about with Greece. We're just seeing those higher charter values for vessels. We're also seeing those ton miles go up. Japan is also the owner of the highest value fleets for both LNG, liquefied natural gas, and liquefied petroleum gas. 37.8 billion, or 202 LNG vessels, and 13.4 billion and 344 liquefied petroleum gas vessels. Japan also owns the largest and most valuable fleet in terms of car carriers, 334 vessels at $22.9 billion. Okay, well, I guess we're going to circle back now to our last 2. So we'll go with number 10. Number 10 is Hong Kong at $44.7 billion. Now, it's noted that Hong Kong has made a significant investment into the bulker sector, which has pushed Hong Kong up to the fifth position in terms of top 10 in ownership of bulkers. This sector alone accounts for about 29% of the total investment. This has been supported by strong bulker values, and we've been seeing the rise in the value of the bulkers in terms of charters and ownership increase during this time. All right, I guess that takes us back to the final one, which is strange, again, to the number 2 position. Okay, number 2 is China at $204 billion. So once again, China is maintaining its top position of ownership just below Japan. This is a total of 6,084 vessels in the current fleet. It's absolutely massive. China owns the largest bulker fleet, both in terms of vessels and values. And if you look at other sectors, it owns the largest number of tankers. It owns the largest of containers. The tanker fleet consists of 1,576. That's a valuation of $47.4 billion. And in terms of container ships, 1,011 vessels. That's $42.6 billion. And the container fleet has grown since last time. This is an increase of 23.8%. This comes as the market has slowed significantly, and it's had an impact on values. Now, I think what my producer was trying to show here, that is, if you take the $204 billion of China and add the $44 billion of Hong Kong, you wind up with almost $249 billion owned by China. When you combine the two, that puts them into a position well above that of the number 1 seat, Japan. If we break this down by category, you can see which countries have the significant lead. So, for example, in the bulker sector, China with $57.2 billion in terms of tankers. You can see Greece with a commanding lead over almost any other country in terms of containers. China at $42.6 billion in LNG, Japan at $37.8 billion in liquefied petroleum gas. Japan also in that lead. Head on down to the vehicle carriers. You can see Japan again with $22.9 billion. And down in the cruise sector, the U.S. with a commanding lead, $49.3 billion. So that's our top 10 list for this year based on VesselValue. We looked at this in kind of a little bit of an innovative way. I hope you enjoyed it. I think my producer needs to work on his math skills a little bit. So my producer here, Maui, will be taking some math lessons. You're not looking into the camera here, Maui. You need to look into the camera. Maui does not want to look into the camera. So hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you did, hey, take a moment, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell so you'll be alerted about new videos as they come out. Leave a comment, share it across social media, and if you can, support the page. How do you do it? Well, you can give it a big thumbs up. You can hit the super thanks button down below where you can contribute directly to the page, or head on over to Patreon where you can become a monthly or yearly subscriber. Until our next episode, this is Sal signing off.